On this podcast, you'll find interviews with high-performing, successful individuals in life sciences. On a weekly basis, we cover their proven methods, principles, strategies, and mindsets to implement new technologies that scale to meet the needs of people in our world.
Welcome to this episode of Life Science Success. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Don, and I'm a digital marketer in life sciences. And before we hop into our interview today with Tim Glennon, I wanted to just play a quick ad from our sponsor.
Episode of Life Science Success is brought to you by D3 Digital Media Marketing. Dive into the digital world with confidence and creativity on your side. D3 Digital Media Marketing is your all-in-one solution for making a lasting impact online. From the vibrant, engaging world of social media marketing, podcasts, and webinars, to the strategic depths of website development, SEO, pay-per-click, email, and content marketing, we tailor our approach to fit your unique brand story. Let's elevate your presence, connect with your audience, and drive success together. Your digital journey starts here. Visit d3digitalmedia.com to learn more.
In this episode of Life Science Success, my guest is Tim Glennon. He's the principal owner of Illumination Strategy Group. Tim's a seasoned professional in the pharmaceutical industry with over 26 years of experience, having held leadership roles at companies like Bayer and Teva and others. And so with that, Tim, it's great to have you on. Yeah, I love the fact that you have this history, and I'm looking forward to diving in.
Yeah, thanks, Don. I really appreciate the invitation. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So would you mind telling the listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, it's funny. I just realized that it's almost 27 years now, and I can't believe it, how time flies when you're having fun. But yeah, as you started, I started at Bayer back in in the late 90s. I'll just put it that way, and started as carrying the bag, as a sales rep. Then went through, got promoted pretty quickly, had a lot of success. And, fortunately at Bayer, one of the things they did is they invested a lot in our development. So I was fortunate enough to hold several roles in market access, area business management, spent some time internally, which really prepared me to go to Teva. And then what I did at Teva was I ran their women's health franchise there, spent a number of years at Teva and really learned a lot there with regards to P&L and really more on the corporate side and corporate responsibility and resource planning. And, which led me then to Evofem, where we were fortunate enough. I had a lot of time there, almost 6 years in sales marketing. When I left, I was the SVP of corporate portfolio strategy and business development. But really brought a novel product to market there, in contraception. And then ultimately, my last pit stop was at Veru Inc. here in Miami, where I was the EVP of Sales Marketing and Sales Operations, and had a great it's been a great opportunity, great companies, all for their own different reasons, and have really helped shape who I am today.
I have to imagine though too, right? So guy goes from Bayer to Teva, from Teva to smaller companies, right? There's got to be just a whole host of things that, yes, you're using a little bit of what you already knew, but there's got to be a lot that you learned, along the way that you would have picked up, I would imagine, from both of those first two organizations. Is that right?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, you're absolutely spot on, Don. It's interesting when you're really at some of those bigger companies like Bayer. I really had the opportunity of learning a lot in the way they invested in our career development, and you get exposed to a lot of different aspects of the business. But some of the times, you look at some of these bigger companies, and you're really somewhat siloed. And if you're marketing, you're marketing. If you're sales, you're sales. And you really don't get exposure like you do in some of the smaller startup companies. And and at Teva, where I was really fortunate is, as much as I spent a lot of time on the marketing on the RX side of the business, I also got some exposure to the generic side of the business, which was super interesting in the way we collaborated. And but when you go to some of these smaller companies, you're sort of you become a jack of all trades, master of none in some ways, because you're exposed to things that you've just got to learn on the fly. I mean, I went in as a sales and marketing guy into Evofem. By the time I came out of there, I was exposed to clinical operations, manufacturing operations. Obviously, I knew trade, but you really start to get exposed to other sides of the business, which just at the end of the day really helps make you a better corporate steward, because you're also dealing with investor relations, and quite frankly, rattling the can is not always the funnest thing, talking to investors on the street, and they put you through your rigors, and it's quite an experience. And so I would say Teva and Bear really sort of gave me my formative, if you will, my early years of really understanding the business. But it's not until I really spent the last 11 years in the smaller side, in small pharma, would I really say that you really start, all the light bulbs start to go off. You start to see the corporate financing, and then you understand where you're going with it, and it really becomes like your money. So you're super cautious in the way you spend it.
Yeah, it's funny that you say all of that, because I feel like inside of a smaller company, you have to be flexible enough to wear a lot of hats, and contribute where you can contribute. And then inside of a larger company, I think it's also important to have sort of those lanes, from the standpoint of when you have so many people, all of a sudden, if you have people start to cross over, they could start to do somebody else's job, and then you sort of lose track as well. So I've kind of watched both I've helped different companies scale, and as get from the 10, 20 to 200 to 1,000, etc. I mean, all of a sudden it becomes more important that you have that structure in place, but you also have to have people, I feel like, along the way, that are willing to flex and bend to meet where the organization is as well.
Yeah, Don, you're absolutely right. The one thing I'll tell you is that, look, as the SVP, I'm going to use Evofem as an example. When I was at Evofem, the SVP of corporate, portfolio strategy and business development was a big role. But let me tell you, I was still doing things that a product manager would do, in marketing. So it's not like, because the titles sound great, but you're still small pharma. You're rolling your sleeves up, which I love to do, and you're really getting into the thick of it. And there's nothing that you should, title doesn't mean everything, but and you really don't want to, don't let your title get to you. And one of the things one of my career mentors said at Evofem, he said, look, you got to make yourself valuable to the organization, especially in a point where you're trying to raise money. We actually hit a hurdle, if you will. We had a speed bump in that we got a CRL, so we unfortunately had to let some people go. I was fortunate enough not to be one of those people, and really had to learn how to make myself valuable at that time, because that's where I got my clinical operations experience and manufacturing operations experience, because and I should say exposure, not experience, but because I was trying to make myself valuable to the organization at that time. But I'm grateful for that experience today.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think it's a great way to learn. So for anybody that's, sort of watching or listening as well, to me, it's a great way to sort of reflect in terms of where you currently are. And like, as you get ready to take that next step, whether it's, you know, up, over, out, whatever your next step is, also considering the size of the organization, to me, is a great opportunity to look at how you can maybe have a different impact, which brings me more or less to my next question for you, which is, what made you want to then found Illumination Strategy Group, and what's the primary mission of the group?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Really, Illuminations, a strategy group. Really, it's let me. What we are is just a bespoke consulting firm, really specializing in providing strategic and commercial guidance tailored to pre-IPO biopharma companies. And I carefully chose the word pre-IPO because a lot of these are the companies that are really innovating today. They have the interesting science, and they're usually very smart people. But what the challenge they face today, as Don, you and I can both relate to from the bullpen, is you hear a lot of people, small companies, great ideas looking for money. And and one of the things that I talk to some of these small companies about is their non-confidential decks, and the fact that they don't really have a commercial story. And so what I'm really trying to do is, I was just recently with my dermatologist, and this is what really motivated me to go to start Illumination Strategy Group. She said, Tim, I want to understand what you do. I just was with this company. They had a great product. All of a sudden, I can't find it anymore. Well, I looked up the company and they're closed. Well, they're closed because they weren't making money and they didn't have the money to keep operating. And as unfortunate as that is, that's what some of these companies really are, is they have great science, they have this unbelievable product that can really change people's lives, yet they don't think strategically enough commercially, meaning commercials more than sales and marketing, as you know, Don. It's about forecasting and thinking about making strategic decisions along the way, and resource allocations based on those strategic models that you're building. And so what I really want to do is help these small companies who have something that's really meaningful to patients, and really not only help them get it to market, but keep it in market. And that's really where the mission and what Illumination Strategy is to me. And frankly, I couldn't do this without all of the years experience at Bayer, Teva, Evofem, and Veru. And they've really sort of helped me identify what it is that I want to do for the remainder of my career.
I think that's so important. You mentioned a few things in terms of this, and I'll tie it back to the bullpen in just a minute as well, and sort of describe the bullpen group just briefly as well. But so I sort of look at all of the vast experience that all of us have, and there may be things that you contribute that other people contribute, and there's just so many things that I feel like when you're a startup founder, and I deal with a few of them, in my business as well, that where they're just looking for, how do I get that next level of help? How do I figure out that next piece? There are certainly other people that are pushing their foot to the floor as fast as they can to try and get down the road, either in terms of their science or even getting their product out to market. And I feel like on the commercial side, there is a gap that I see as well, where people oftentimes don't start the beginning part of their pitch deck with like, okay, so where does this problem actually exist? And how can I see it from the outside? And then paint the picture from there to, so what are you going to do to commercialize your product to get it out to market, right? Because I feel like everybody knows that you have to do, like total addressable market, and you need to talk about, kind of patient populations and things like that, oftentimes on the drug side. But there's also many pitch decks, whenever you see them, they talk all about the device or the drug, in depth, and then eventually get back to total addressable market. And I feel like there's an opportunity there. And just to mention really quickly for anybody that's listening or watching as well. So the bullpen group is a invite only club that really tries to gather people that understand life sciences, as well as people that have a background in terms of investing and things like that. So whether you're, a life science investor or a CXO inside of, any of these markets, whether it's on the medical device side or on the drug side, they're an organization to support you. You can find them at Bullpen Ventures, and their mantra for me is like the ultimate sort of passion project, which is, find someone, help, and repeat. And I absolutely love the bullpen for that. And so I'm, certainly glad to have you on and discuss, more of what you do. So thanks a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, Don, I appreciate it again. The one thing that you said, and I want to reiterate for everybody to understand, is people misinterpret what the word commercial means. And I can't reiterate that enough. They think it's sales and marketing. It's not. I'm actually preparing a presentation right now for a financial officer group. and they're an organization, and they're all in pharma. And one of the things we're talking about is where commercial involvement actually starts. And one of the things that came out of this revelation for me as I'm preparing the deck is exactly what you said. Where does commercial start? And it starts way earlier in the process, because a lot of these non-confidential decks, I'm going to give you a real life example. Two companies this week showed me a slide. I have a $35 billion market. I said, you know what? A blockbuster in today's time is $1 billion product. You're telling the investor they're going to get a $35 billion? No way. Nobody believes that. You need to peel the onion back. You need to say, hey, look, of the $35 billion, here's where I play, and this is where your investment is going to make the most sense, and what you're going to, and then they can start figuring out their multiples of return. And that's where I think that's where I really want to help companies not only access the funds, get the funds, but also think strategically from a resource allocation perspective. Because the other thing that I see small companies make, and it's a huge pitfall, is they have a great asset. The old "my baby's not ugly" thing, and yet they want to go after 4 indications, and 3 of them you take the payers, they're worth nothing. Yet they invested another $100 million to get 3 indications worth zero in the payer's mind. And that's what I really want to help educate them on, is making those strategic decisions along the way. And those decisions start early. They involve commercial. It's going to payers, going to patients, going to doctors, understanding what, or healthcare providers, pardon me, and making sure that you've got something there, that there's a real value prop. And then obviously you start talking about pricing strategy and what payers are willing to pay.
Yeah. I think it's also important for us to talk a little bit about where you would get involved, because I think, so there's an organization that I'm involved with now, right? And so we are still doing base level science in a lab, but we're also at the same time having conversations about actually what is it going to be to commercialize, and what is that going to look like. Just for people to get a picture of this, right? So we've had 2 successful SBIR grants already. That's funded an awful lot of the science. Now we've applied for the commercialization grant. So hopefully, that next phase kind of comes along, and in that same phase, you have to also start to answer pretty serious questions with investors about, exactly what you're saying. Because whenever you get on the phone and let's just say you start off with, hey, look, I'm gonna go after a $34 billion, sort of market, and they immediately want to pull the carpet out from under you, because of the fact that somebody in that group probably knows, hey, look, the biggest blockbusters are $1 billion markets, so most likely somebody in the investors crowd, already knows that, and it's important to have people like you. That I would imagine that really can break those things down. Where do companies normally get you involved, and what does that look like?
Yeah, Don, great question. One of the things that I think is important is to step back and really help people understand it. And so really where the best place to start is pre-IND. And I'm going to break it down for you like this. I think there's 2 parts to commercial. There's the opportunity assessment piece, which I have labeled where to play. This is where you're going to play, where the asset's going to fit in, how much of the market share it's going to take it, what's the competitive landscape look like, why do you think you can get this? Here's what the current assets are charging. If it's a new MOA, it's a totally different animal versus it being a fourth in class. So that's the where to play, if you will. And then where we do is we pivot to, and this is usually phase 2, 3-ish, probably closer to the beginning of phase 2. You start to switch, and it's your how to win strategy. So in other words, you really start shifting away from your where to play, because you may have your investment strategy, and then your investors are going to start saying, hey, tell me how you're going to win. What's the messaging campaign looking like? What are payers really saying now? Because we think we're going to have this indication. But really early on, it's pre-IND, and I'll tell you why. Because part of that where to play assessment is where you're going to actually sit around. You're going to sit with the the scientific leaders of the organization that you're counseling, the regulatory leaders, and you're going to talk about the probability of technical and regulatory success. You're going to say, hey, doctors, we're hearing we need this. Can you make this happen in the clinical trial? Hey, regulators, can this get through the FDA? What are the hurdles we're going to have to overcome to prove that we can get this, whatever it is? And because we're going to know commercially that that's what the payers are looking for, and the end users are going to be looking for, i.e. the healthcare providers and consumers. So the sooner you can bring us in, the better off you are, because we're going to help to better define your where to play strategy. And then that's going to inform your resource allocation burn, if you will, as you're really trying to develop your clinical pathway towards approval.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in terms of organization size, what do organizations normally look like that you're working with? Tell me.
Yeah, right. So right now I'm in conversations with two different groups. Most of them, if they're small and they're pre-IND or they're in R&D, I'll just call it that. They're usually pretty lean and mean. They may have a commercial person, they may not. My advice is, and the beauty of Illumination strategy is, you don't really need a commercial person. We're here as a fractional resource to you. And you don't need to bring in a full-time chief commercial officer at a pre-IND phase 1, phase 2 type asset. What you really want to do, and what we're there to do, is, and I define an asset very carefully, is that an asset actually has a valuation to it, and you know what the valuation is because you can put a number to it and stand behind that number because it's researched, versus a product, which is, hey, I've got something to cure some form of cancer. That's a product. An asset is, hey, actually, you've got something because you know that it has a value that you can stand behind. And so I look at it that way. And so, these companies are usually smaller, CEOs, science people, regulatory people, and medical people with very little to no commercial representation or thinking. And then, obviously the other side of the coin is you got somebody who's got an approved product or they're close to approval, and they're starting to, if you will, build out their commercial organization and things of that nature. And as they're hiring, they need they need support until they get the people in to do it themselves, and so that's the other side. And then obviously the third side is somebody who's already got an approved product.
And do you help them build sort of the way it would look like whenever they're finished? So this is what it looks like to have a field force, and maybe how you would scale that through time, or not?
Yes. So the way we really try to work with them, Don, that's where I would say that's your how to win piece of our strategic involvement. And what we'll really do is we'll sit down, because once we start everything. All of our decisions are objective, in that we inform decision models. And what we do is, every part of research we do, we pour it into the model so that it becomes more educated. And so as we're getting more research, we're dumping it in to the model to better inform the outputs. But what we're doing at that stage of the game and the how to win is, we're sitting with the client and really advising them to say, look, you got a couple options here. Phase 1 is you're going to go a small launch, small in regards to FTE size, sales force, things like that. Or you could go this way, and it's a bigger resource investment. But really in today's world, I really try to advise them to go small and go slow. And really try to make sure that we know what we have before we get there, and then you can scale as you see fit, and then that way you're a better financial steward of the money that you've invested, and maybe you don't have to go back and dilute your investor base because you've taken a more financial approach. That all depends on the company. That all depends on what their plan is. And, I'm in this scenario, I'm really saying the company wants to commercialize themselves. On the contrary, there are companies out there who just want to try to sell. And unfortunately, that ship has sort of sailed, unless you have a really novel product, because now pharma wants to see that it actually has demand, and then they'll come pay the multiple that you're hoping to get before it's commercial.
Yeah. So given your level of experience and the fact that your experience spans several different therapeutic areas from women's health all the way through to oncology, how do you stay updated and make sure that you're at the top of your game? This has got to be a challenge given all the stuff that's coming at us.
Don, I got to be honest with you. I saw this pre-question and I started going, "Oh my God, I don't even know," and I still don't. I'll be honest. Women's health. Because it's a passion project of mine. I follow most of the companies. I know most of the BD companies are in it, so I follow them on LinkedIn. Believe it or not, LinkedIn's a huge resource for me. And then I use Fierce Pharma a lot, and the only reason I use Fierce Pharma because they really sort of keep, it's a quick snippet. They can keep stuff, and then if I want to go read, I'll go read up on it more and more. And I use Pharma Forum as well. But as I'm starting to span out in my consulting business, I came across an Alzheimer's product the other day, amazing product. So I started reading up on Alzheimer's, and some of it is just fortunate over time. Some of it is the hard one for me to keep up with is oncology. It's always moving, it's always advancing. It's a huge focal point. And the other one for me that's really hard is infectious diseases is a little easier because it's a hard place to really get into and study. But is rare disease for me is one that I think is the one that I don't know how anybody can keep up with it because there's just it's so hard until you hear about the company. But a lot of it is reading. I like to read. I'd rather read about science, and it's a passion of mine. It's when I started way back when I was actually going to medical school. When I started in pharma, my intent was actually to go back to medical school. So, I love the body. So I love reading about things like that. And I'd rather do that than read a book unless it's a business book. For some reason, I love reading business books and don't read stories.
Yeah, I'm somewhat the same. I will go on vacation, and that's normally my goal is X amount of business books while we're away. So that's normally my sort of
It used
passion
to be.
project as well.
It used to be a lot easier for me because I flew all over the country all the time, but now that I'm home more and, really focused on this, I find that I have to make a concerted effort to really try to stay up now. But, and especially because you start getting focused on the clients you're working with, it's super, it's hard to keep up with everything else that you're trying to do to keep yourself sharp at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, the one reason, and many people know this, if you've watched or listened to the podcast for any period of time, the thing that started it was I wanted to stay connected to people like you. This is the very, very sort of selfish act on my part. And it started off with phone calls and somebody asked me to record one. And so after that it became a podcast, but it was, one of these things where I wanted to just stay updated and stay connected with the industry. And how do I do that? And a friend of mine just said, yeah, you just need to have calls. And I couldn't think of anything, that else that would sort of put me in that line, but similar to you, I check out Stat News. That's the other one that I would say I
Mm-hmm.
read other than Fierce Pharma. So Stat News and Fierce Pharma probably are at the top of my list as well.
Fierce is a great look. I know the group that started Fierce, and I really appreciate what they do. And sort of, it's easy to read bullets and just grab what you want and click on a quick article as you're eating a sandwich or something at the computer. It's great. I really appreciate what they do, and Pharma Forum is similar to that. And between those two and LinkedIn, it's about all I can do to keep up, unless it's something like I need to unless it's for a client. And, like I told you, I may have somebody in Alzheimer's. So I've really gotten into Alzheimer's and reading all about it. So it's been super interesting to me because I don't think I really appreciated all of the intricacies and complexities of Alzheimer's until I really started potentially, doing some research for this potential client.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So, in your opinion, what's the most significant trend that's shaping the pharmaceutical industry?
Wow, I think that's a really tough question to answer. I think what's really interesting right now is the AI trend, artificial intelligence. I just was a reviewer of a piece about AI and how they're going to use it in pharma. And the other thing that it really is, I see real applications for AI in regards to drug development and potential applications in market research and potential applications and tools that pharma may be able to access to get answers to questions that quite frankly scares me a little bit, because it could also say, hey, we no longer need consultants. Well, that's what we do. So it's a little scary in that way. I don't think it ever replaces the person, because if you ask an AI tool, which I use Chat GBT, I asked it the other day just to see what it would say. Hey, what emotions do you feel? And it said, I don't feel emotions. So, but I think it's super interesting. AI is a really interesting place. I really appreciate what it does, and I appreciate the innovation of what it represents, and I look forward to continuing to watch it flourish and be applied to the industry. I think it has big applications in product development, and the thing that amazes me the most is I think AI puts us this much closer to having very tailored medicines for patients and treating patients who have severe complications that nothing works for.
Yeah, we could only hope that it accelerates the innovation that we see even further. Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that point. I feel like it's a real game changer, and I do look forward to seeing what the impact is. I do think that there will be growing pains. I'm not naive to that, but at the same time, I mean, to be honest, something that can help you brainstorm, help you think through things, honestly it's a favorable thing, any moment of any day. And so yeah, I completely agree with that.
I mean, the thing that's interesting to me with AI is that it can really speed things up in a variety of ways, and Don, I totally agree with you. The efficiency of which it will provide solutions is going to be amazing. And I don't want to misquote the study that some AI tool compared to a doctor just did, and who got it right and who got it wrong. I read it, but I can't remember the exact outcomes of it. But it's super interesting to me to see that AI can get very close to right as much as as the human can, and I just think the human brain is amazing in and of itself, and the fact that this computer can do something like that and help aid or maybe even speed up diagnoses is amazing to me.
Yeah, absolutely. What's been the most innovative project or product launch that you've been involved with?
Hmm. Um, I think one of the ones that probably was the most interesting to me was way back early in my career when we launched the IUD back at Bayer. Way early on in my career. I came in right after the launch of Mirena, and so I still consider it to be a part of. I still consider myself to be a part of the launch team. That was a product that really innovated and changed women's lives in a multitude of ways, and and it still is today, really impacting the lives of many women. And so, from that perspective, that product has probably been the one that's been the most, I would say, had the biggest impact on the largest number of women, because when you look at IUDs and you looked at the IUD market at that time, it was women were concerned about it. There was PID concerns. There was this whole concern of having something, put in your uterus, the whole nine yards. And the way Bayer and Mirena really changed the perceptions of not only providers but of women, and gave them such control of their fertility, I think is just absolutely phenomenal. And and on the opposite side of it too is, then I looked at something like what Evofem had in their contraceptive gel, and potentially looking at something that can change the microbiome of women and really look at a way of controlling vaginal pH through a gel was something that was super interesting, and the potential it could have for STIs is interesting as well. But each company I've been to really had something different. Teva had a non-hormonal IUD, and Brew had a host of products that I thought were really interesting. They have a product in development, sabizabulin, that I think appears to have some major benefits. So each one of them has a little bit of a different meaning to me, but the one that I think most that has impacted the most patients today is by far Mirena. But it's
Thank
also
you.
been on the market since 2001-ish, 2000-ish.
Thanks for that. So, just curious, in terms of your history and things like that, I would imagine that you probably run into a variety of leaders as well. What's the greatest leadership advice that you've ever received?
Oh, I hate to say it, be genuine and honest. I will tell you firsthand, as learn from somebody who made mistakes as an early, leader of people. My advice to you is always be genuine and honest, and don't tell them don't be afraid to tell them what they need to hear. I personally have a story that I will, briefly share and simply say that, I made a mistake, and I learned from it. And what it really was is I wasn't as honest and didn't provide, the constructive criticism that I needed to that person at the time. But, today, I really try to be honest and be genuine to the person and show that I care. And if you really do care about the person, honesty is the best policy.
Absolutely, that's absolutely true. And I can't think of it any more important time than whenever you're leading people and sort of, whether it's giving them, honest feedback that will help them, move forward, or even honest feedback that maybe they haven't gotten before. Because I do feel like there's an awful lot of people that will, sort of tell you things that, at the end of the day, aren't really helpful to you in your career. And it's like, okay, so let's really examine this and go a little bit deeper and try and really understand, how does this benefit me, as an individual, or, if you're leading those teams. I can't think of anything more important than the leader being able to say, hey, look, here's the top, one or two things that I would coach you on, that will help you move forward.
Yeah, I totally agree, Don. My mentor, and his name is Russ, and he was one of the ones who really said, "Hey, you got to be honest early and often early on in my career," and I really appreciated that. And it's something that I still try to live by today, and really to be honest with people and be now sometimes it's hard, and it's hard to say it, but as uncomfortable as it is, at the end of the day, at least in my experience, it's actually made the relationship stronger. And it makes the bond that much more between the person you're leading and yourself as their leader. And usually at the end, you watch the person grow in ways that you would have never imagined had you not done that, that you may never have even observed had you not done that.
Absolutely. What inspires you?
Ah, along the same lines, I think what inspires me the most, in individuals or companies that I work with pursuing growth, and growing either experimentally with new approaches, to really try to achieve their goals. I think, for me, it's that determination and that spirit, that, to take risks, to innovate, to adapt to what's going on around them, to succeed. And that's really what inspires me the most, is watching companies either achieve their goals on their own because I help them, helping people achieve their goals on their own because I help them. To me, witnessing the relentless pursuit of progress, and and the impact that it has on people is what inspires me to do what I do every day. And it inspires me, and it inspired Illumination Strategy Group. And, I really look forward to continuing to seek those opportunities to help people not only grow in their, in their journey, but also for what lies ahead for me to grow in my own journey.
Mm.
And that's what I can't wait for. And that's what really, quite frankly, everybody asks you what gets you up every day. That's what gets me up every day. And that's why, Illuminations came to existence.
Very good. What concerns you?
Stagnancy, or and that's not a word, but becoming stagnant is what really scares me the most. The idea of staying and not growing either mentally or physically is what terrifies me. And quite frankly, it 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 it, it just really, it's what concerns me the most, I think. And I want to, I believe in continuous learning. I believe in evolution. I believe in experiencing new things throughout life. And becoming complacent and not pushing yourself for more is something that, at the end of the day, just frightens me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you, my friend. So yeah, I definitely feel that as well. It's one of the reasons why I stuck so long with formal education, and also I just sort of found, even towards the end, it was like, look, I could even impact the world even bigger if I continue to learn more and share what I've learned with people as well. So I completely agree with you. Last question, what excites you?
I think what excites me the most is the challenge of tomorrow. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I think, the thrill of facing a new challenge to me, going into uncharted territory for me, Illuminations is that. I mean, I've always talked about starting my own business. It's a huge risk, as you can relate, Don. It's the opportunity to learn and grow from unfamiliar experiences, and really to, the chance of overcoming obstacles, and really stretching my comfort zone. And to me, that's what excites me, is, the uncertainty of what lies ahead is, but doesn't scare me, but really excites me because, at the end of that, I know there's going to be personal and professional growth that comes along with it. And to me, that's why I do what I do. And, that's why I love Illuminations, because there's a lot of unknown day to day. But at the end, I feel like if I do the right things and I continue to grow, I've got this great group that I work with who challenges me as well. And I learn a lot from them. Internally, we call them, it's a group that we call the Fab Five. They're great. But it's, facing some of those challenges with them is really good, and what excites me for tomorrow and days to come.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for being on the Life Science Success podcast. I greatly enjoyed hearing about Illumination Strategy Group, and I definitely would encourage people to reach out to you, when they're looking not just to commercialize, but also to look at that overall sort of process that they're going to move forward with bringing their product to market. So thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Don. Thanks again for the invitation. And, I want to wish everybody the best of success.
Thank you for listening to Life Science Success. For complete details about this podcast, including show notes, how to get in touch with guests, and more episodes, please visit www.lifesciencesuccess.com. If there's someone you'd like for us to invite to the show as a guest, please let me know by sending me a message at the podcast website. Please click subscribe on your favorite podcast app, share the podcast, or tell a friend about it, and last but not least, rate the podcast. Thank you again.